I'm starting back here because the title of this talk was The Gilded Age, but the church has a much older history than that, which I personally find really interesting. And I've already had a couple of questions about this bell and the gravestone, and it is a wonderful story. Next to Lisa is a picture of the old church. It was a frame church, very modest, built in the 1860s. And a young 18-year-old man who lived in Roslyn was the Sunday school superintendent. His name was John Codman Pollitz. The Civil War came along. He immediately enlisted and went off to fight in the Civil War. After he'd been there a very short time, he sent all of his paychecks back to Roslyn to buy a bell for the new church. He died. And the first time the bell tolled was at his funeral. So it's just always been one of these kind of heartbreaking stories. And the bell has been at the back of the church for many years. Now, a few years ago, the legend had always been that he was buried somewhere under the church, but nobody knew where. Very few years ago, I think 2018, the church floor, there were some cracks, the foundation had to be checked. The floor had to be redone. So this whole area where you're standing was taken up. And once the floor was uncovered, this gravestone was found under the floor. And a history was found written in 1914 that the same thing had happened. In 1914, there were some cracks in the foundation, and the then rector of the church had crawled underneath and had discovered this gravestone and the bell, which had been buried at some point with Codman, and decided to bring the bell up, but leave. It was all buried because when the old church was demolished, the new church covered the area where the grave had been. So when he brought the bell up, he left the gravestone under there, and nobody had any idea where it was until the floor was removed. And I remember coming in here, our sexton, the caretaker, called me and he said, "We've made this very exciting discovery. We found out where the grave is because we'd always heard that it was somewhere here." And he said, "We've taken up the stone, and the stone is now in place next to the bell." And it's just, to me, it's just a beautiful story. This young man, he was 19 when he died. All of his savings went to buy this bell for the church that he loved so much. And the first time it tolled was at his funeral. It was a very touching story. So where his grave is, there was someone who came in to actually do some sort of X-ray work and find out that underneath the gravestone there actually was something that appeared to be a coffin. So someone is probably standing over a brass plaque right there, and that is the location of his grave.